Greetings, dear viewers, and welcome to my fan commentary on episode 4 of Power Rangers Time Force, Ransik Lives. Perhaps the darkest episode to kick off an early point in a Power Ranger season, and it's a very uncommon episode for a villain to be to have a tragic backstory. And this is Ransik's big episode, though it's one of the most, trip fishing for a boot. I mean, as soon as I was just talking about that, then we opened up to this episode. The Rangers are still camping around the debris of the time ship. And I'm like, and Wes shows up on his blue motorcycle lights. This is pitiful. You guys are living like this. You guys are like, what are y'all, homeless? Yeah, and there's just no way to live. I kind of wish that, while I do like that the base of operations for the Rangers while in 2001, with Wes, of course, that they gotta live at this dusty old clock tower, and knowing this is a green screen shot because I wonder how they built this, is beyond me, and also the clock tower set, because it looks like, it's a really dusty, I mean, with all those old cobwebs, it has this abandoned tower, this abandoned building look, because it feels like people haven't been in this clock tower in like ages, because it's so old. I just kind of wish that the Rangers lived in somewhere that didn't felt very abandoned and dusty and cobwebbed and stuff. While I do mind this base of operations for the Rangers as their home, and with all those and that's supposed to be a reference to Time Ranger, because in their opening credits they had those white birds flying around and stuff. And as Lucas puts it, it is a dump, because really, who wants to live here as a home? I'm like, you know, I get that compared to the Time Rangers and Sentai, they got this nice 21st century esque apartment building that they have to rent on a weekly basis. But I just wish the Time Force Rangers had something like that too. And also that's a green screen shot. So there you go. But I kind of do wish that they had an apartment building that was fancy and nice to live in, because this just feels like, okay, well, it makes sense for the theme of the series that their base of operations has to be the clock tower. I mean, I know I'm kind of I'm kind of bitching about it, but it's like, I wish though that they had a fancy apartment that they could live in, like one of those condominiums or something. But I wish they lived in a condo. That would have been nice to fit the theme of the series, but unfortunately, the clock tower, well, unless you don't have no, green, bald-headed vulture guy living in a clock tower. And I have to quote Spider-Man with that. Who's your landlord, Vulture? Quasimodo? That is a lot of junk. All these webs, all these boxes and crates. The windows have been dirtied up for so long. And, Lucas is that stupid to blow all that dirt and stuff, and when he's sweeping, that's stupid. Trying to get someone sick. Now, whatever Saban show that Nadir is watching, I mean, this cartoon here, I don't know what this cartoon is called. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments, because I really don't know what that show is, because they showed clips of this twice in the season. While it did took some elements of the second episode left over from the second episode of Time Ranger, but it adapts Time Ranger's third episode because, again, Force from the Future was a two-parter. Last episode was episode 3, and this is the fourth episode of Time Force produced. So basically, they're 2 episodes behind from where they were adapting from the Sentai, or 3 episodes ahead. While Fear-Rog was in Time Ranger, Fear-Rog was in an episode about the Yellow Ranger. This is not really about any of the Rangers specifically, unless if you count Wes getting captured by Nadir and the Cyclobots and being brought over to Ransik at the TV studio. Oh yeah, like all clock towers and churches, there's always bells. This musical bit here that Saban's production team did here, some of the musical notes for this scene when Katie lifts up that church bell, why does that sound like notes from John Williams' Superman theme? I've noticed that when I thought about some of the music scores for some of these Power Ranger seasons, some of the music sounds so familiar to what I know from other popular franchises that came before Power Rangers at the time, particularly during the original Saban era. Costume montage! Yeah, the civilian clothing for the rest of the season. Yeah, that black cat for Trip. Well, it makes sense because for him being a Cybrian, he has to, again, 21st century's not ready for that kind of people yet. And yeah, oh boy, Jen looks so hot with those boots, the black leather jacket. Oh boy. You gotta love Trip's, feeling for getting hungry, and then when he sees that pigeon become, oh yeah, that rotisserie chicken. Yeah, I wish I had a rotisserie chicken right about now. Because one of the rules about time travel, that if you're traveling to a certain time period like the past or the future, you gotta have some civilian clothing to fit in with the time period you're from or where you're at. Because if people find out that if you traveled from the future, and if you show up in our time or in the past, people are gonna wonder, oh, they're from the future? So that's why you have to blend in wearing clothing to fit with the time period you're in, because given that the season was 2001, some of the clothing attire that the 4 Rangers wear, given that Jen and them are from the year 3000, some of the clothing attire feels so late 90s, but again, it's 2001. You're stupid. You should have watched where you were going, knocking that tub of paint. I've done it once. Common sense also, I get to get the plot of the episode going. Once Wes, as he was about to finish up painting, he hears Cyclobots coming into the hallway. Maybe he should have put his morpher in his pocket. If that his white paint suit was to have pockets, it should have pockets. But the Cyclobots are going to know he's the Red Ranger. As soon as they see that, oh, Chronomorpher, attack the Ranger! Basically, he should have just put the Morpher in his pocket, but no. They're going to know who he... And also, this fast motion sequence, with the camera, it is so, Walker, Texas Ranger level of TV filmmaking with this. Because, of course, this is the kind of fast sense of speed with the fighting. Because, again, given that... back in the late 2000s, we still acted like we were in the 90s still, but we're in the beginning of the 21st century. Ugh, Nadira and her Lady Deathstrike nails again. Ugh. Ransik going full Magneto here. Although, again, X-Men The Last Stand wouldn't happen until 2006, but This scene in particular is the most infamous scene out of all the Power Rangers. When you got a villain sending a terroristic threat like this part of the episode had to be redubbed so many times due to 9/11 because Ransik's speech earlier was so terroristic sounding at first. I can't remember how it sounded before, but all I remember is this post 9/11 edit when he was like in the part when Circuit told the Rangers to turn on the TV that the whole surrender or be defeated, which sounds not to sound surrender, sound more terroristic than it does. And also when Fear-Rog, shoots lasers down to where he's shooting, it was originally at a building that was getting zapped and vaporized, but instead it's being replaced from a building getting blown up to a rock quarry explosion. They did, of course, in one edit of the episode when it was reran after the 9/11 attacks, that they had to replace it with the Time Force instrumental theme, or they should have just muted the whole part of that episode and just not put the theme song in, because they knew that the, again, 9/11 had a huge effect on us after this. And when the episode Destiny Defeated aired, weeks after that episode aired was the 9/11 attacks. And also this part of the episode had to be modified when Ransik told Wes that, an hour from now your entire city will be blank, but it had to be modified because he was sounding very sinister in this episode. So they had to had Vernon Wells to redub this line that he said that your entire city will be mine, instead of saying your entire city will be perished or be killed or any of those words like that. Because he was, again, this episode is what I think caught Saban's attention to now re-edit partial 50 or 45% of Time Force's early batch of episodes. And then once it got to Destiny Defeated, and when they got back to that episode and reran it, that they would have to, edit out nearly some pieces of dialogue that sound terroristic. This backstory about how in the year 3000 about the DNA genetics, one of the things about Time Force's season is that it was very science fiction oriented compared to previous seasons. I can't go in full detail because I know as much as I like science fiction and fantasy, but science fiction has a huge benefactor, like how, in a dystopian world where people were free, a society where people are free of disease and and stuff like that. But then somewhere in a lab accident, I don't know what happened, like, unless that vial of all that ooze. Oh crap, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secrets of the Ooze all over again. And just like I first wondered, this is like the same incident where that radioactive ooze came from, how Master Splinter got the Ninja Turtles to come to be, of his 4 sons, those 4 turtles. And this is so Universal movie horror monster like with Ransik's hand, that, you see, this is one of the darkest episodes for Power Rangers, and I kind of wish they did episodes like this, for villains, but unfortunately this was 20 years ago. I gotta admit, out of all of the villains in the original Saban era, Ransik had some of the most darkest development of any villain in the original Saban era, and he is perhaps one of the darkest villains we've had in Power Rangers. He was shunned by society, and he, when people helped him, he shirked them away. But he wanted help, but he pushed everyone away, and society shunned him. So that's why he decided to be a terroristic, mutant mastermind who wants to, rally up an army of mutants to join him. Because humanity shunned him, and thus that's why he has so much hatred and prejudice toward human mankind, knowing Ransik is partly human, but he's purely a mutant underneath some human. But he's just something else. And I just feel like I kind of do feel sorry for Ransik, and watching that backstory is one of the most traumatic one of the dramatizing traumatic things to see from a Power Ranger villain like Ransik. And I think this episode, intricates how he came to be. in Frax's Fury, I already did a fan commentary of the episode. They delved on more on Ransik's backstory a little bit with how he got his serum, but that's many episodes away from here. This was just the origin of how he came to be, how he's born in a freak lab accident back in the year 3000 or so, and society then just turned him away. I don't know what camera they used to make that fast motion stuff with them moving like this with the camera frame rates. They pull out the chrono blasters. This is the first time we see the chrono blasters, but they called it time blasters, which was also the name of that sweepstakes that Fox Kids had for Power Rangers Time Force back in 2001, the Time Blaster sweepstakes, but which I never got to enter as one of those many kids who wanted to enter that contest. In these first three episodes of the Time Force Megazord's use in Zord fights, the Megazord goes from mode blue and then goes into mode red. But in episodes following episode 6, it's either one episode you do mode blue and then the next episode mode red, sometimes mode red and another episode mode blue. And then when the Time Shadow shows up, when they do the Shadow Force Megazord combination, it's like one episode it's in mode blue and then the next episode is mode red, or I don't know. Jet mode would be introduced in episode 7. I never really did understood when the Megazord, mode blue Megazord has to jump on that cloud, like jumping in on like a trampoline. But again, it was in the Time Ranger footage, but it's really weird. I actually prefer mode red's finisher when finishing off a mutant than mode blue, because mode red is my favorite version of the Time Force Megazord. I mean, mode blue is fine, but I actually like it, mode blue a bit when it's with the Time Shadow for Shadow Force mode blue. Now, I can't tell how much money that guy gave them for their first odd job. Because, well, as they put it, that again, like I mentioned, Ransik was, he people tried to help him, like I said earlier, and even what Jen said at the end of this episode, when Wes wanted to know why is Ransik the way he is and why he showed up into this time and then tried to alter the course of history. You know, I've seen better pizza than this. I know this has got to be some local pizza shop somewhere in Silver Hills. You're going to wish Angel Grove had a pizza shop like whatever Silver Hills. And then they got to reuse this shot of him yelling no up in the air in that rain. It is a very sad and tragic way. But while it's ended fairly great for the Rangers, not so much for Ransik, unfortunately.